Most people finish a conversation and move on. But if your brain works differently, conversations don't end when the words stop. They echo. Hours later, days later, sometimes years later. You replay what you said, what they said, what you could have said. Not once, but in layers. You analyze tone, facial expressions, pauses that lasted half a second too long, a word choice that suddenly feels wrong when you hear it again in your head. Psychology doesn't call this overthinking by accident, because what's happening here isn't simple worry, it's pattern reconstruction. Your brain is trying to rebuild the social moment from the inside, searching for meaning that wasn't obvious in real time. Studies on highly analytical and trauma-adapted minds show that this replay behavior is common in people who learned early that social details mattered for emotional safety. At some point in your life, missing a signal had consequences, so your brain adapted. It learned to slow time after the fact, to scan conversations the way others scan memories, to search for hidden signals beneath normal words. That's why this behavior feels exhausting. You're not reliving the conversation for fun. You're doing threat assessment, socially, emotionally, psychologically. And here's the part most people never understand. You're not replaying the conversation because you're insecure. You're replaying it because your brain is exceptionally sensitive to nuance. Neuroscience links this to heightened activity in the default mode network, the system responsible for internal simulation, future prediction, and self-referential thought. In simple terms, your brain doesn't just experience interactions, it models them. That's also why you often understand what people really meant, long after everyone else forgot the conversation ever happened. But there's a cost. When this ability turns inward, it creates pressure because every interaction becomes unfinished business in your mind. And the more intelligent the analysis, the harder it is to shut off. This isn't weakness, it's an overdeveloped internal mirror. And if you do this constantly, psychology suggests your brain doesn't work slower than others, it works deeper. Point 2. You feel drained after social situations that seem normal to others. You didn't argue, nothing dramatic happened, no one was openly rude, and yet you're exhausted. Not physically, mentally. After a meeting, a family gathering, a casual hangout that everyone else describes as easy. But for you, it feels like your mind just ran a marathon. Psychology has a very specific explanation for this. People whose brains work differently don't just participate in social situations, they process them in real time. While others are reacting instinctively, your mind is doing multiple things at once, tracking emotional shifts, reading subtext, monitoring your own responses, adjusting your behavior dynamically. This is called high social cognitive load, and it's common in people with elevated empathy, intelligence, or early emotional adaptation. Your brain is constantly asking, what's the real mood here? Is this safe? Am I being understood correctly? What's not being said? Most people don't notice this layer. You do. That's why silence can feel loud, why small talk feels heavy, why being on socially costs you energy instead of giving it. Research shows this trait appears often in individuals who grew up needing to anticipate emotional environments. Your brain learned to stay alert, not relaxed. And here's the paradox. You may seem calm, composed, even confident on the outside, but internally, your mind is scanning continuously. That scanning burns fuel. This isn't introversion in the traditional sense. It's neural intensity. Your brain processes social data at a higher resolution than most. And just like a high-performance engine, it overheats faster when there's no downtime. Psychology doesn't classify this as a flaw. It classifies it as heightened perceptual engagement. But if you never learned how to disengage, the exhaustion becomes chronic, and the world starts to feel louder than it should. Point 3. You question your own thoughts more than other people do. Most people think a thought and accept it. You don't. You question it. Why did I think that? Is this reaction justified? Is this emotion real or am I projecting? Am I seeing this clearly or through bias? Your mind doesn't just generate thoughts, it interrogates them. Psychology calls this metacognition, thinking about thinking. And while it's associated with high intelligence, self-awareness, and emotional depth, it also creates inner tension. Because you don't experience thoughts as facts, you experience them as hypotheses. This makes you reflective, insightful, hard to manipulate. But it also makes rest difficult, because your brain rarely accepts the first answer. Neuroscientific studies show that people with elevated metacognitive activity have stronger connections between the prefrontal cortex and introspective networks. In plain terms, your brain doesn't let ideas pass through unchecked. You analyze motives, you question impulses, you examine beliefs before trusting them. That's why you're often slower to react, but deeper in understanding. However, this constant self-review can turn inward. You start questioning not just thoughts, but yourself. Why am I like this? Why do I feel different? Why does this affect me more than others? At that point, self-awareness quietly becomes self-pressure. You're not detached from reality, you're too close to your inner world. And psychology links this pattern strongly to people whose brains developed under conditions where self-monitoring was necessary for survival or belonging. You learned early that awareness mattered, so your mind never stopped watching itself. This trait is often misunderstood as anxiety, but it's not fear-driven, it's precision-driven. Your brain wants accuracy, clarity, truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And that's why your internal world feels intense, because few people live inside their thoughts the way you do. Point 4. You feel out of sync with the world, even when things are fine. Nothing is obviously wrong. Your life looks functional, you show up, you do what's required, you handle responsibilities, and yet something feels misaligned. It's not sadness, it's not dissatisfaction in a clear sense, it's a quiet sense that you're moving through a world designed for a different rhythm. Psychology links this feeling to people whose brains operate with asynchronous processing, meaning your internal pace doesn't match external expectations. You don't react instantly. You don't decide impulsively. You don't feel emotions on schedule. While others move forward quickly, your mind pauses, observes, connects dots in the background. This creates a strange disconnect. People may say, "You're overthinking. You're too serious. Just go with the flow." But what they don't see is that your brain doesn't enter situations the same way. You don't experience moments at surface level. You experience them in layers. That's why time often feels distorted to you. Fast days feel empty. Slow moments feel heavy with meaning. Psychologists note this trait frequently appears in people with high introspection and deep emotional processing, especially those who learned early to adapt internally rather than react outwardly. You learn to survive by thinking, not by acting fast, so the world's pace feels unnatural. This doesn't mean you're behind. It means your brain prioritizes understanding over speed. And in a society built around quick reactions, that difference quietly creates isolation. Not because you don't belong, but because you're tuned to a frequency most people never hear. Point 5. You notice patterns other people completely miss. You'll hear someone say, "I don't know why this keeps happening to me," and you already see the pattern. You notice repetition in behavior, cycles in relationships, predictable emotional reactions disguised as randomness. And when you point it out, people are often uncomfortable because you're not guessing. Your brain is exceptionally good at pattern recognition, especially in human behavior. Psychology associates this with heightened activity in associative neural networks. Your mind doesn't store experiences separately, it links them. That's why your insights often feel sudden, but are actually built over time. You connect past behavior with present choices, tone with intention, emotion with outcome. This makes you perceptive, but also burdened, because once you see patterns, you can't unsee them. You start predicting outcomes you wish weren't true. You recognize warning signs before consequences appear. You feel the future forming quietly. This can be unsettling because awareness doesn't always come with control, and people don't always want truth, especially when it threatens comfort. Psychology shows that individuals with this trait often feel misunderstood, not because they're wrong, but because others aren't ready to see what they see. You're not pessimistic, you're observant. And when the world insists everything is random, your brain knows better. Point 6. You feel deeply, but express selectively. You're not emotionally numb. In fact, you feel intensely, but very few people see it. Psychology calls this internalized emotional depth. Your emotions don't explode outward, they settle inward. You process feelings privately, sometimes silently, until they become fully understood. That's why people might describe you as calm, reserved, or distant. But internally, entire emotional landscapes are unfolding. You don't cry easily in front of others. You don't vent impulsively. You don't react just to be seen. Instead, you observe your emotions before releasing them. This trait often develops in people who learned early that emotional expression wasn't always safe or welcomed. So, your brain adapted. It learned to contain before revealing. This makes you emotionally resilient, but also lonely, because others may assume you're unaffected, when in reality, you're deeply impacted. Psychology recognizes this pattern in individuals with high emotional intelligence combined with self-control. You don't lack emotion, you regulate it carefully, and that regulation is not suppression, it's precision. But the cost is that few people truly see how much you carry. Point 7. You constantly analyze yourself from the inside. You don't just live experiences, you observe yourself living them. You notice your reactions as they happen. You question your emotions while feeling them. You analyze your thoughts even as they form. This is constant self-analysis. Psychology links this to deep self-awareness, but also chronic inner pressure. You don't simply exist in the moment. You step outside of it mentally, watching, evaluating, adjusting. This creates distance between you and your own experiences, not because you're disconnected, but because your mind is always active. You ask yourself, why did that affect me? Is this reaction rational? Am I being fair to myself?
Over time, this internal observation becomes exhausting because rest requires surrender, and your brain struggles to let go. Psychologists note this trait frequently appears in individuals with high intelligence, trauma adaptation, or heightened consciousness. Your brain learned that awareness equals safety, so it never fully turns off. But here's the crucial truth. If you recognize yourself in these behaviors, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means your brain adapted to understand the world more deeply. And adaptation is intelligence, even when it hurts. Understanding is the first step toward relief.